Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news. You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. Listen on demand wherever you get your podcasts or watch us live on YouTube.
With 3 days to unpack, my God, we can't take these Mondays off, but it was really nice to have a long weekend, and I hope you did as well, with a good MLK Day here as we launch ourselves into year number 2. Welcome to the Tuesday edition. I know it feels like a Monday here on Balance of Power. Bloomberg Radio, we're streaming live on YouTube. That part hasn't changed. Search for us, Bloomberg Business News Live, to catch our live feed here from Washington, D.C. A spirit of dialogue is how they're calling the World Economic Forum's 56th annual meeting. Half the shop is over at Davos right now. We're still ensconced here inside the bubble. The president doesn't leave until tonight, and we have the full band. We put the whole band back together here for this shortened trading week. Producer James is with us, America's producer, the Fernando Mendoza of talk radio. Along with, as I mentioned, Tyler Kendall. We're going to spend some time with Tyler in just a moment. And Christina Ruffini is standing by with her insights on exactly what in the world is going on here when it comes to Greenland. And as I mentioned, our NATO allies. The president, he was at that game, talked about it on his way back last night. Listen.
I don't think they're going to push back too much. Look, we have to have it. They have to have this done. They can't protect it. NATO's been warning Denmark for about 20 years now, longer than that, 25 years. They've been warning Denmark about the Russian threat. And it's not only Russia, it's also China. So we'll see what happens. But let's put it this way. It's going to be a very interesting Davos.
Yeah, it is. It already is, as they wait for the president to land. It's like Jurassic Park when you see the big puddle and the ripples. The T-Rex is coming. Tyler Kendall covers Donald Trump for a living, and she's with us right now as they gas up Air Force One. Tyler, it's great to have you. They're going to be out of here tonight, and this is going to be one ripper of a speech tomorrow. I don't even know where to start, by the way, with asking you questions here. This was 3 days of wild rhetoric, a lot of posts. He's posted like 3 times on Truth Social since I came in the studio here. In fact, we may as well just update everybody. This is the most recent one from 10 minutes ago. No single person or president has done more for NATO than President Donald J. Trump. If I didn't come along, there would be no NATO right now. It would be in the ash heap of history. Sad, but true. And he signed it, so we know he wrote it. Is that what he says tomorrow morning in Davos?
Very likely, though. I should start by saying I know where I want to start, which is that you are America's anchor,
Joe,
part of this team.
Never heard that before.
There's a lot that we're looking out for tomorrow. Of course, this was a weekend of escalation. Now, we should first say that the White House has actually pitched this as a domestic speech. We've heard from his advisors, like the NEC director, Kevin Hassett, saying he's going to roll out his housing affordability plan. We've already heard floated some details of that around how homeowners could take from their 401ks and put that towards a down payment. But at the same time, it is hard to ignore that there is just so much geopolitics at the moment. And this speech is coming after a weekend where President Trump stoked a few different disputes with allies, perhaps most notably this threat of a 10% tariff by February 1st, up to 25% by June for those countries that have rallied around Greenland. Yeah.
So he's going to be headed over there tonight. And I guess the big question is, what's the purpose of all this messaging beforehand? Because, right, he's a deal maker, as we always hear. He's going to ask for something insane or demand something insane and then call it a victory when he pulls back and cuts a deal on this. Do we expect a deal on Greenland this weekend? Or are there sideline meetings being set up? What's going to happen?
Well, the pushback that we've already seen from European allies is probably going to make that possibility a little bit more difficult because President Trump has only really ramped up the pressure in recent hours as European leaders have responded to this. I'll point out that issues are starting to really collide here. We had the French President Emmanuel Macron raise concerns about Greenland, but also raise concerns about President Trump's proposed board of peace in Gaza, which officials tell us he's looking to finalize on the sidelines of Davos later this week. And in response, President Trump shot back, floating the idea of a 200% tariff on French wine and champagne, which makes it feel like we are not getting any closer to some sort of resolution here. But I do think it's worth pointing out the broader context, which is that these threats came over the weekend from President Trump, but it came after a week here in Washington where we saw meetings between the administration and officials from Denmark and Greenland that were characterized as relatively positive. They actually came out saying that they established these working groups to keep diplomatic channels open, but it's very clear that the president didn't feel that way, because then we saw this rhetoric over the weekend.
Amazing stuff. Tyler, thank you. Bloomberg's Tyler Kendall with a lot to talk about here. EU ambassadors are going to be holding an emergency summit later on this week. They met yesterday to discuss putting in place $93 billion of retaliatory tariffs on American imports if, indeed, this new 10% kicks in Feb 1. I should mention, by the way, what didn't happen today. We got no ruling on tariffs from the Supreme Court. So all of this remains in place for now. Christina Ruffini covered the State Department and geopolitics for a lot of years, and as you've seen on this program, has a real keen sense for what's going on here and joins us live from World Headquarters in New York. Christina, it's great to see you. The Norway letter was everything. It was a text, actually. Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be predominant. What's he telling EU leaders, our NATO allies? Is it prepare for an invasion?
I mean, this is a threat that's being taken a lot more seriously than I think other Trump rhetoric has in the past. I am going to tell you, my phone started blowing up at 5 a.m. this morning from Europe with my WhatsApp pinging with a bunch of different officials asking what is going on. I'll give you some of the adjectives I received. Absurd, freaked out, next level, game changer, really, really bad. And look, some of these ministers are folks who have a good relationship with this administration and have previously urged calm, while others have been at an 11. All I'm hearing, all the amps are up to an 11 today. Everybody is really, really concerned. Look, I think there is... Got to get that Spinal Tap reference in there somewhere.
Amps are up to 11. I bet you had some other words on there, James. We keep the dump button ready.
No.
Do you see the markets now down over 1%? We just learned something important, Christina. I'm going to let you continue here with this now in mind. It was producer James who told me this. He had an inkling when we came in the studio. The press secretary said she'd have a special guest today for the briefing at 1 o'clock. You know who it is, according to CBS? It's going to be Trump.
Yep.
What's he going to say? Does this mean that he's nervous about this market reaction?
I don't know if he's nervous or if you're going to hear him double down. Look, there's a couple things going on in the background. We do have the Finnish president who told Bloomberg TV this morning he does not like to be thought of as the Trump whisperer, but he also kind of is. Officials tell me he golfs with the president. He has a very good way of urging calm with the president. You know, he was saying conversations over the past few hours have given him hope. We also have the Treasury Secretary saying, like, this will all calm down. I did speak to a former member of this administration who also said they believe this will be worked out in the next couple days. And this is a tactic. The president likes to go in hot and negotiate down from a high level. This is all part of the strategy. That is ringing a bit hollow with Europeans who once again are scrambling not only how to react, but how to react in unison. Obviously, they can do tariffs. They can do this nuclear option. They can dump treasuries. And I heard from a European official today who said, despite all that rancor, despite the disagreements in tactic, they do believe Europe will come together and institute those tariffs if Trump goes through with this.
Yeah. What do you think of the other texts? He put texts to Macron, Rutte, and Starmer up there. I mean, wow, I don't even know which one to pick here when it comes to the Rutte call. Very good telephone call, as he wrote in his own post concerning Greenland. Then he posts this thing, Mr. President, dear Donald, what you accomplished in Syria today is incredible. I will use my media engagements in Davos to highlight your work there in Gaza and Ukraine. Committed to finding a way forward on Greenland. Macron with a similar, I don't understand what you're doing with Greenland.
But we can do good work on Syria, focusing on the positive in that macro
great
text.
Work on Syria. We've got less than a minute, Christina. What is actually exposing these private texts due to these relationships?
I mean, it's not good. I think all these leaders are smart enough to know that this is always a possibility when you send Trump a message. But any diplomat knows there are things you need to say to your counterparts that you need to not be made public. That makes all of this much more complicated.
Remember when he put Lindsey Graham's cell phone number on TV? This is like
I do remember that. Like it was yesterday.
Christina, thank you. Apologize to everyone who is texting you or messaging you this morning. And come hang with us more often. This news briefing is set to start at the top of the hour. Maybe we'll pull Christina back in here after we hear from the president. Ruffini live at 7:31. I'm Joe Mathieu in Washington. We're going to pull America's dad in next. Yeah, see, it's like a Monday becomes Tuesday, only on Bloomberg.
Stay with us on Balance of Power. We'll have much more coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
Thanks for being here on the Tuesday edition, even though I keep saying it's Monday. Bloomberg Radio, satellite radio, channel 121, available on YouTube as well. I'm just trying to get my head around the sphere in Washington, D.C. Was this part of Donald Trump's vision? You've got the Arc de Triomphe over there on the other side of Memorial Bridge. Well, there it is now if you're with us on YouTube. Look at this artist rendering here from the company, the Sphere. These are the guys, from Las Vegas. We're getting one here. Washington Post was the first to hit this. The company saying it will be the first mini sphere. Be right off the Potomac River down there. If you know National Harbor, that's where this is going to go, across from Old Town Alexandria. When you fly in, you're going to see the sphere looking up at you, apparently. This will be a 6,000-seat sphere. It would open in 2030. A third of the size, they say, of the one in Vegas at half the cost. $1 billion? They could take $1 billion to build that thing? The company says it'll provide $1 billion in economic activity annually. But we're worried about data centers taking up all the power. What the heck is this thing going to? How do you get the juice to run this thing? We're worried about planes being able to see their way into the airport. What's going to happen when you go out to dinner in Old Town? You're going to see this big thing blinking at you from across the river? This is why they didn't want one in London. And I think the sphere's cool. Nathan didn't know we were going to be talking about this, but he's in here now. Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence Senior U.S. Policy Analyst. You ever been to the one in Vegas?
I have not.
It's pretty cool, though, right? I wanted to go. I just didn't want to go to it here.
Well, if we can get like a 4-week run of the Eagles or something like that, then maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
Well, I didn't think about that. We get the big residencies now. I live down there, though, across the river. I'm going to see like this false sunrise all the time with this thing. It's a really bright thing that we're adding to the skyline here. There's a big, what do they call it? The big Ferris wheel already. Changing D.C. as we know it.
Well, it's National Harbor, and I say this as a Virginian. Like, I've been there maybe twice in my life, so, maybe the sphere will be
Don't tell Glenn Ivey that when he comes in here. We've got to talk about what's happening in the markets vis-a-vis geopolitics, and I want to ask you about what's happening on the Hill. All of these things overlap somehow. It's curious that the Speaker of the House is speaking to British Parliament today. Well, we don't have a funding mechanism yet in Washington. The president's upset half of Europe. He's on his way to Davos. Yeah. James asking, will it be the Trump sphere? We'll have to put his name on it, right? So what are you getting phone calls about? Because the bond market doesn't love what's happening with all of this. The stock market, well, it was coming into this at all-time highs, but it seems to be pretty upset today, too.
Well, many times on this program, I said there's 3 ways of implementing policy. It's regulation, legislation, and executive orders. Mm-hmm. But there's a 4th way, and this is what the clients are calling on, is what are we getting from the bully pulpit? What are we getting from President Trump saying, either on social media or even to a bunch of CEOs saying, I want you to do something. Think of this credit card interest cap at 10%.
Yeah.
Today's January 20th. It's supposed to be effective today. I actually went back and checked my credit card. It's not capped at 10%. So the question here is that a lot of these clients are calling and they're saying, look, how does the bully pulpit work for President Trump? How does he influence policy? And you sort of get this idea that like headline risk comes out, the stocks move towards a headline. Think of private equity with Blackstone when he announced that they was going to ban corporate purchases of single family homes. Blackstone reacted to that. It's actually a small portion of their business. It's actually not all that important to them, but the stock still moved. Mm-hmm. So you have this headline risk, then you have this analysis of what actually he means, then you have to try and figure out how does he use the bully pulpit to try and change behavior, because the other ways of doing stuff, legislation, that doesn't happen very often, executive orders, somewhat limited, or it goes to the courts, regulation takes time.
You need to write like a Trump playbook. I mean, for real, that's what you're talking about, right? This is all based on the history of the last year.
Well, if
we were sitting here 1 year ago today, you probably wouldn't have answered it like that.
Exactly. You're exactly right. And think about it where we are in terms of the election. So we have the midterms in November.
Yep.
By around April or May, all 435 members of the House and 33 members of the Senate, they're going to start getting itchy. They're like, I don't want to be here in Washington. I want to go home and campaign because my opponent is campaigning against me. So legislation dries up. So what do presidents do in that time frame? And what do they do in their second portion of their second term when they become that dreaded word lame duck?
Travel, baby.
They travel, they go international, and in President Trump's case, they use the pulpit to try and change the policy.
Really interesting. Is Davos a policy gathering, or is this a scolding? Is this more about rhetoric or policy this week?
So I had this thought this morning as I was driving in. Why is President Trump delivering a speech on affordability in Davos and not in
front of billionaires?
So
he can scold them, call them out? Is that good optics?
You know what? That could be part of I'm just spitballing here, but like if you're trying to do an affordability speech in an election year, you would think you would do it in Arizona, North Carolina, so Louisiana with Senator Cassidy's stuff that's going on down there, but he's not. He's doing it in Davos. And so you're going to see this speech tomorrow, and it's most likely going to say there's an executive order on affordability coming, housing, credit card cap, maybe the swipe fee, but a lot of it is going to either need Congress or it's going to go back to this idea of looking these CEOs in the eye and saying, look, I want you to do something. And in that credit card space, when you have a company like Bilt saying, look, we're going to put out a credit card capped at 10% for 1 year, and people start calling it Trump card, other banks, other companies, they may want to actually get in, because at the end of the day, for these corporations, they don't want to be in a fight with the White House. They just want to be left alone.
Who's watching? Cece's asking a great question. Like, who are normal people who are, don't subscribe to terminals, trade stocks, invest themselves in the economy every day? Are they watching anything at Davos anyhow? They see all these, anchor men and women out in the snow with big coats on. What the heck are they doing? Is this mainstream?
Well, I like to think most of the Bloomberg clients are all watching Live Go tomorrow, and they're going to watch it all.
But, I'm sure.
But, one of the questions we got from clients is, do voters actually care about geopolitical matters? Yeah. And the answer is yes, to a certain extent, but affordability is going to be the message that goes into the midterms, and affordability is the message that we're going to be looking at for 2026 in terms of U.S. domestic policy. And what can the president do to actually bring prices down? I was a giant over the weekend, and a bag of Doritos, a large bag of Doritos, was $8.29. Yes, when you look at data centers and electricity prices going up for here in the region, that's certainly important to watch about. But again, from the president's standpoint, there's only so much he can do via unilateral executive action. So it's going to be really important to see if he can find other methods to influence policy. Was
that the family size or the party size?
This is the party size.
Party size. Not to be confused with the fun size, which would be very tiny.
But my family could take down the entire bag. It's
no doubt. I just don't get, why is the small one the fun one? That's just strange psychology. All of this as the House returns today. And we've got less than 2 weeks to a shutdown, but nobody's saying that it's a shutdown. In fact, we've seen a whole bunch of funding bills actually get some action here. As of late yesterday, we're trying to finalize Defense, Transportation, HUD, Labor, HHS, Education, and Homeland Security, the latter of which is the most difficult one because of concerns about language surrounding ICE enforcement. Do we get this done this way, or is everyone going to have to be pulled back into town next week for a last minute something?
I think it's going to be close, but if there is going to be a continuing resolution, it's going to be a quick one. I don't think this is going to kick into late March or anything. Okay. I think they're getting close. The reason being here is that you have the election. It feels very different than the pre-shutdown, week before we had the one last year. Yeah. And because Democrats look at the last shutdown and they said, look, we came out of this pretty decent with independence. Let's not upset the balance, especially as we've had success in Virginia, New Jersey, et cetera. Republicans look at the same shutdown and they say, look, we got the blame amongst independents. Let's not go back to a situation like that. Because at the end of the day, the midterms is what they're thinking about right now. And the shutdown just really doesn't play into any political strategy of why you'd want to shut the government down. I don't see anybody saying, outside of like Senator Coons, for example, there are some people out there that are trying to use this for political messaging, but amongst the rank and file and the establishment, I really don't see that those words being thrown around.
Well, that's nice to hear, I guess. Is the debate over Obamacare subsidies on ice for now? What happens when lawmakers come back?
I think it remains on ice. Our colleague Dwayne Wright, has been writing about this all the time, and he still uses words like skeptical and long odds because at the end of the day, there are a lot of people on the Republican side that don't want to see these subsidies continue, and it's just extremely difficult for a solution to come together, and that combined with an election year, I just don't see it happening.
So sit back with us for a minute. It's only once a week we get to sit on the porch here with our friend Nathan, and I'm just curious what's going through your mind 1 year later. I was sitting here in this room, sitting next to Kailey Leinz 1 year ago. Remember, it was like 1 degree outside. They had to move the swearing in indoors. I'm surprised I haven't seen more archival footage of the president in the rotunda and Joe Biden and everybody else. Remember, they were waving at him as Joe Biden took off behind the Capitol. And then what happened? Your phone has been ringing for a year about so many different crises. You went through Liberation Day. You've seen the so-called taco trade. And the way you just walked me through your interpretation over what's happening now suggests that we've learned a lot in the last year, changing the way that you even do your business. Has it changed the way people interface with you, the questions they ask? Yeah,
it's all about President Trump's social media strategy, all about his public persona as opposed to the process. We actually thought there would be more legislation in 2025. Obviously that didn't happen. We had the One Big Beautiful Bill, and people in Washington are beginning to utter that word that presidents hate, and that's called lame duck. And, that's one of the things where presidents then begin to try and influence policy through their own persona, and President Trump has really done that. So I think what happens here is rather than looking at the process of how things get done, and look, there are still deregulatory efforts. The banks in particular are still really looking forward to this Basel III Endgame G-SIB surcharge proposals that are coming out. You're looking at $60 billion in capital that potentially could be returned. So deregulation is still there. But the question now is, how does President Trump influence policy via executive order and through the bully pulpit? And that has changed the game tremendously because no president has acted like that in the last 25 years.
Fascinating. What piece of legislation were you most surprised did not get passed? Was it clarity? Was it something altogether different?
Clarity I always thought was going to be a 2026 issue. I didn't think it was going to be 2025. I think that there was a little bit more on the defense side that we were, Senator Graham's $150 billion that had to go through the One Big Beautiful Bill. But, going into this election, every sector had its own small piece of legislation. And those haven't passed.
Amazing. Really interesting, Nathan. How chippy is the State of the Union going to be? Are we screaming from the rafters this year?
It's going to be, I'm going to steal my Bloomberg popcorn and take it with me.
Okay, fair enough. You have odds on a shutdown? I haven't even asked you. Still at 30? 30. All right. This is the guy right here, the real thing, Nathan Dean, Bloomberg Intelligence. Nathan, thank you as always. We'll assemble our political panel next. Rick and Jeannie coming in next, only on Bloomberg.
Stay with us on Balance of Power. We'll have much more coming up after this.
You're listening to the Bloomberg Balance of Power podcast. Catch us live weekdays at noon and 5 p.m. Eastern on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app. You can also listen live on Amazon Alexa from our flagship New York station. Just say, Alexa, play Bloomberg 1130.
You got a VIX now knocking on 20's door here. This is not great. Gold is up. Crude oil is up. It's interesting what is getting a bid because so much of the market is lower here. When you consider some of the stories that we've been talking about recently, ExxonMobil climbing, Micron climbing, Mag 7, not so much. We'll be watching the markets as the president speaks next hour. And of course, he's going to be talking about war and peace, right? When he comes into the Oval Office. This is about Greenland. This is about NATO. This is about national security. Not to mention, as he told officials in Norway, the 8 wars he managed to end. I think he said 8+. I'm not sure exactly what that equals. But the president's talking about more than Greenland right now. You've heard about this board of peace. This has to do with Gaza. The invitations have gone out. Interesting who is invited and who is not. Because now Emmanuel Macron says he's not interested. The president wants to charge $1 billion for a permanent role on the Board of Peace. He also invited a guy named Vladimir Putin, who was busy bombing neighborhoods in Kyiv last night. On his way back after the game last evening, the president asked about this. Let's listen.
Do you have any response to President Macron saying he will not join the Board of Peace?
Oh, did he say that? Well, nobody wants him because he's going to be out of office very soon. So, that's all right. What I'll do is if they feel like Costa, I'll put a 200% tariff on his wines and champagnes, and he'll join.
Do you invite President Putin
yes. He's one of the people. These are world leaders, and the answer is yes.
Wait, whoa, what about the wine? You heard this? We got another 200% tariff on wines and champagnes. He says then he'll join. Not sure that the president wants him to, but indeed a permanent seat on the Board of Peace, which is being framed as this sort of alternate to the UN Security Council. Can I go there? Will cost countries $1 billion. I can't imagine what the panel thinks about anything that I have said so far this hour. Let's bring them in. Bloomberg Politics contributors Rick Davis and Jeannie Shanzano off the long weekend and here on your radio and on YouTube. He's our Republican strategist, partner at Stone Court Capital. Good to see you back in the USA, Rick. Jeannie is Democracy Visiting Fellow at Harvard Kennedy School's Ash Center. As you both have heard likely by now, we're going to be graced by the president in the briefing room, which is not something that we see very often. First, Caroline Leavitt said it would be a special guest. Now we know it will be the president who has been on attack, Rick, for the past 3 days. What are we about to see and hear?
You know, it's kind of hard to tell. Sometimes when he sees the bond market react to his policies, I think about, the earlier when he announced his tariffs on Liberation Day, he came out and backed off the markets considerably. I'm sure they're waking up today, taking a look at how the markets are reacting to this latest flurry of social media texting that he's done, and maybe wanting to do the same approach. I mean, this is coming into Davos hot, and I doubt if there are that many people who think this is, within the West Wing of the White House, who thinks this is a great way to do the classic Donald Trump escalate to de-escalate. So maybe today is de-escalation.
Coming in off the top rope in Davos, Jeannie, the president's going to have quite the preamble here in the briefing room. I mean, you know how this goes. When he starts, it usually is a good 45 minutes. Maybe it's going to be more than that. Whether he wants to scold the media, I do find it interesting that he is marking his first year back in office. This is anniversary day today. Jeannie, we were all freezing and talking about the swearing in a year ago. The president wants to spend some time with his favorite reporters. This is obviously a moment for him to set the agenda 1 year later. What do you think he has in mind? Is it more of what we saw on Truth Social?
Yeah, we're still all freezing, but how much has changed in the last year? I don't know what the president has in store. I am frightened to even imagine after the weekend we have had. We're on the 1 year celebration, and he is talking about going to war with our closest allies. We have Europeans sending troops into Greenland. I mean, the world has gone topsy-turvy. It's incredible. And the big winners out of this are, of course, Russia and China. You may have noted on X that one of Putin's closest advisors, Medvedev, is posting these really celebratory ideas about how MAGA now means make Europe poor again. And on the Russians are going, having a good laugh at the expense of the United States and the breakup of what they see as the breakup of NATO. Hopefully we don't get nearly that far, but this seems to be where we're headed. And the only ones celebrating besides Trump seem to be the Russians.
Imagine the leader of Norway, this Jonas Store. He feels the phone buzz in his pocket, and he pulls it out. Look at the phone. Oh, Donald Trump. Unlock the phone. Considering your country decided not to give me the Nobel Peace Prize for having stopped 8 wars plus, I no longer feel an obligation to think purely of peace, although it will always be prominent, but can now think about what is good and proper for the United States of America. How would you interpret that message, Rick? Is the invasion set to begin?
I don't know if the invasion's set to begin, but he certainly decided that he wants to go hard into this negotiation for Greenland. I mean, you could have written 100 different scenarios to make this actually worth Europe's while to have the U.S. In some kind of a bargain to give security agreements and economic assistance to Greenland, basically getting the same thing that he wants in a cooperative way. But that's not the approach he's taken. And so he's going to go to Davos with an expectation that the Europeans are going to roll over on him, and he's going to make them do it in the harshest fashion, right? In other words, not because he made it worth their while, but because he crushed them into it. And, we've already heard a lot of leakage out of the White House saying, gee, we're not exactly sure this is the right approach. Well, we're going to see. And right now, it doesn't sound like the Europeans are in a deal-making mood, and these kinds of threats are probably making it worse, not better.
Great reporting on the terminal, Jeannie, as Bloomberg seizes on the symbolism of the house of God along the illustrious Davos Promenade. The administration has taken over a 19th century church, been reconsecrated for the week as a shrine to business and politics. And on the eve of the president's arrival, you might have seen Scott Bessent speaking to reporters on camera right in front of the building. Massive banner that hangs on USA House, spelling House of God. Is Trump the God, Jeannie?
I think he thinks he is, and I'm hoping those letterings are in gold, Joe, or he might not be too happy when he gets there.
It's bold, all right.
It is stunning to think about the president going over there. And you mentioned this tweet. Understand the Finnish prime minister was also on that group chat. So I can't imagine either one of them being on that group chat and seeing the leader of the free world say, you didn't give me a prize for peace, so I'm not sure I'm not invested in stopping killing people at this point. I mean, the entire thing is ridiculous. And let's not forget, the United States, under current treaty, can also do everything it needs to do in Greenland. We don't need to negotiate much at all. So that is, this is a ridiculous idea strategically and in every other way.
Well, we're still talking about it, and it's not about to end. He'll be on Air Force One to Davos tonight.
Thanks for listening to the Balance of Power podcast. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already at Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find us live every weekday from Washington, D.C. at noontime Eastern at Bloomberg.com.